Good evening. I was lucky enough to read Todd's book, England is Mine, in manuscript, and admired it greatly, and am delighted to be here for the kickoff event, and also to have heard this wonderful 20-part poem of Denise, which I will look forward to reading in the London Review of Books. I'd like to begin by reading two sections of a 12-part poem, the title poem of my most recent book. It's called Yeshiva Boys, and the poem is a sort of combines personal and family history and philosophy, and also spy novels in a narrative. So I'd like to read two sections of this. Section 4 is called After Auschwitz. In the yeshiva playground, they were marching, chanting, marching around in circles, bearing pickets, bearing scrolls, saying, "No poems after Auschwitz, no poems about Auschwitz." While in the back row, the poet sat dreamily and stared out the window, hungry. Could there be lunch after Auschwitz? His mother did everything she could have done, but there wasn't money enough for the necessary bribes, and her parents were deported to Riga and shot. A woman he met at a writers' conference told him she was working on the Holocaust and memory at Yale. The question she had was this: are American Jews making a fetish out of the Holocaust? Has the Holocaust become the whole of Jewish experience? You go to shul on Yom Kippur or Passover, and everything is the Holocaust. I shut my eyes and hear the old prayers made new. Shame is real, said Ida Noyes. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. I, an American, naturally preferred a temple carved out of water and stone, the rage of a waterfall, the melody of a brook. But back to nature as a strategy failed when the phones started ringing in the woods, and only a child would think of collecting dead leaves and pasting them back on the trees. So I returned to the city, married, settled down, had a child of my own, pretended that I was just like anybody else. Yet I feel as if my real life is somewhere else. I left it back in 1938. It happened already, and yet it's still going on, only it's going on without me. I'm merely an observer in a trench coat, and if there were some way I could enter the newsreel of rain that is Europe, some way I could return to the year where I left my life behind, it would be dear enough to me, danger and all. This part is in italic. To him, an emissary of a foreign war, London was unreal. He wondered which of his fellow passengers would make the attempt. He knew now that they would try to kill him. Tomorrow, if not today. How could he have been such a fool? Herr Endlich said, "We have our ways of making a man talk." In the last 48 hours, he had learned two things: that you couldn't escape the danger, it was all around you, and that the person who betrays you is the one you trusted most. The strategists in Washington couldn't figure it out. Why in hell were the Germans wasting fuel on trains to camps in Poland? The other section I'd like to read from the poem is section 10, which is subtitled The Red Death. Arthur Schopenhauer, Rabbi Beagle-Eisen's favorite student, stood up and said he was awestruck at the power of the will to live, the urge to mate, despite the misery and pain of human existence. And so Schopenhauer became known as a pessimist, though it seems like good old-fashioned horse sense to me, said Beth Hayes. And God said, "Be fruitful and multiply." This was God's first command. And just to sweeten the deal, you get to fornicate like beasts, but with the capacity to think about it afterwards, in secret, in the dark, with remembered pleasure, or shame, or guilt, or love of the one you have linked with. Nihilism is dead, as utopia is nowhere, and high school sucks, but it's better than the old country. You can always treat yourself to an existential crisis. God made man in his own image, and man instantly returned the favor. Did Voltaire say that? And darkness moved upon the face of the waters. Next door they were practicing. They had simulated the camp down to the last detail, the barbed wire that electrocuted you if you touched it. And I stood hatless in the wind of the Lord and saw from the mountain top what the new year held. And one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revels, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all.